June 4th, 1942. The Central Pacific. Somewhere between Hawaii and Japan, 400 miles northwest of a tiny coral atoll called Midway, the most powerful naval strike force ever assembled is cutting through calm blue water. The carriers are enormous: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. They are the fist of the Imperial Japanese Navy. They are the same ships that destroyed the American fleet at Pearl Harbor 6 months ago. They are crewed by the finest pilots in the world, men who have fought over China, men who have bombed Darwin, men who have swept the British from the seas around Ceylon. They believe they are invincible. They believe they are hunting. On the bridge of the flagship Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo watches the horizon. He is 55 years old. He is a torpedo specialist who never wanted to command carriers. He is cautious by nature, methodical, deeply aware that these 4 ships represent the entire offensive capability of the Japanese Empire. He has been told the American fleet is at Pearl Harbor, licking its wounds. He has been told no American carriers will appear until June 6th at the earliest. He has been told this operation will be easy. He is wrong. Because 200 miles to the northeast, invisible below the horizon, 3 American aircraft carriers are waiting: Enterprise, Hornet, Yorktown. They are not supposed to be here. According to every piece of Japanese intelligence, they should be scattered across the Pacific, unaware that anything is happening near Midway. But the Americans know. They know exactly where Nagumo is. They know exactly when he will attack. They know his order of battle, his objectives, his timeline. They are not the hunted. They are the trap. In the next 12 hours, the attack on Midway will not become a Japanese victory. It will become the most decisive naval battle of the 20th century. It will be a collision between overconfidence and desperation, between doctrine and intuition, between an empire at its zenith and a nation fighting for its life. When the smoke clears, 4 Japanese carriers will be burning hulks. The war in the Pacific will have pivoted on a hinge of 5 minutes. The greatest mistake in Japanese military history will be written in fire and salt water. The hunters are about to become the prey. And they do not even know it. June 1942 is a strange moment in history. The world is on fire, but the flames are burning in Japan's favor. Since December 7, 1941, the imperial war machine has swept across the Pacific like a typhoon. Hong Kong fell in 18 days, Manila in 3 weeks. Singapore, the Gibraltar of the East, surrendered in February with 80,000 British troops. The Dutch East Indies collapsed. Burma was overrun. The British fleet was shattered in the Indian Ocean. In 6 months, Japan has conquered an empire stretching from the Aleutian Islands to the borders of India. The American public is reeling. Pearl Harbor was a wound that has not stopped bleeding. The newspapers are filled with defeat after defeat. Bataan, Corregidor, Wake Island. The names are becoming a litany of disaster. In Washington, there are whispers that the Pacific might be lost, that perhaps the best strategy is to focus on Europe and negotiate with Tokyo. But in a basement in Pearl Harbor, a different story is being written. It is being written by a man in a bathrobe and slippers who has not slept in 3 days. Commander Joseph Rochefort runs Station Hypo, the Navy's signals intelligence unit in Hawaii. He is brilliant. He is eccentric. He is obsessed. He and his team of cryptanalysts have been working around the clock to crack the Japanese naval code, a cipher system the Americans call JN-25. It is not fully broken. They can read perhaps 1 word in 5, but 1 word in 5 is enough. In early May, the intercepts begin to show something. A major operation is being planned. A massive fleet is assembling. The target is designated by a 2-letter code, AF. The question is, what is AF? Washington thinks it is the Aleutians, maybe Fiji, maybe even the West Coast. But Rochefort is convinced it is Midway. He has seen the geographic patterns. He has traced the logistics. He knows the Japanese mind, and he has an idea. He sends a message through the undersea cable to Midway. It is a simple instruction. Have your garrison radio Pearl Harbor in plain language. Tell them the water distillation plant is broken. Tell them you are running out of fresh water. Midway complies. The message goes out uncoded, naked on the airwaves. 2 days later, Rochefort's team intercepts a Japanese transmission. AF is short on water. The trap is set. Rochefort knows not just where the Japanese are going. He knows when they will arrive. He knows how many carriers. He knows which admirals are commanding which ships. He has handed Admiral Chester Nimitz the greatest intelligence gift in naval history. Now the question is, what do you do with it? Admiral Nimitz has a problem. He has 3 carriers. The Japanese have 4, plus a massive fleet of battleships and cruisers. Conventional wisdom says you do not pick a fight when you are outnumbered. Conventional wisdom says you wait for reinforcements. Conventional wisdom says Midway is expendable. But Nimitz is not a conventional man. He is from Texas. He is calm under pressure. He trusts his intelligence, and he understands something that the Japanese do not. Carriers are the new capital ships. Whoever controls the air controls the sea. If he can catch Nagumo's carriers while their planes are down, while they are vulnerable, he can even the odds. There is another factor. One of his 3 carriers should not even be operational. Yorktown was savaged at the Battle of the Coral Sea 3 weeks earlier. She took a bomb that penetrated deep into her hull. The repair crews at Pearl Harbor estimated she would need 3 months in dry dock. Nimitz gave them 3 days. For 72 hours the shipyard worked around the clock. Welders and mechanics swarmed over the carrier like ants. They did not repair her properly. They patched her. They welded steel plates over the wounds. They got her seaworthy, barely. On May 30th, Yorktown steamed out of Pearl Harbor, trailing workmen who were still making repairs as she cleared the channel. By June 2nd, all 3 American carriers have rendezvoused at a point northeast of Midway. It is optimistically codenamed Point Luck. They sit and wait. The pilots play cards. The mechanics check the planes for the 10th time. The tension is suffocating. They know the Japanese are coming. They do not know exactly when. June 3rd, a patrol plane spots the first elements of the Japanese invasion fleet 600 miles west of Midway. The report crackles back to the carriers. Transports, escort ships, but no carriers. Where are the carriers? Admiral Raymond Spruance commands Task Force 16, centered on Enterprise and Hornet. He is a surface warfare officer, not an aviator. He is methodical, calculating, uncomfortable with unnecessary risk, but he understands the mathematics of carrier warfare. You do not wait to be found. You strike first. The side that launches first usually wins. He decides to launch everything at dawn on June 4th. Maximum range, maximum risk. If the Japanese are where intelligence says they will be, his planes can catch them while they are attacking Midway. Decks full of planes, fuel lines exposed, bombs and torpedoes stacked in the hangars. If intelligence is wrong, his pilots will run out of fuel and ditch in the ocean. 4:30 in the morning, June 4th. The sun is not yet up. Aboard Akagi, the flight deck is a controlled chaos of engines and propellers. Nagumo is launching his strike against Midway. 108 aircraft, 36 dive bombers, 36 level bombers, 36 Zero fighters. They climb into the purple sky and turn southeast toward the atoll. He holds back his reserve. 93 more planes, armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. These are for the American fleet, if it appears. Doctrine says keep your options open. Doctrine says be prepared. Nagumo is a man who follows doctrine. At 5:34, a patrol plane from Midway spots the Japanese carriers. The report reaches the island and is relayed to the American fleet. Contact: 4 carriers, bearing 320, distance 180 miles. It is happening. On Midway, every plane that can fly takes off. They do not wait for coordination. They do not form up in proper attack groups. They just go. 6 brand-new Avenger torpedo bombers, 4 Army B-26 Marauders carrying torpedoes, 16 Marine dive bombers, 15 B-17 heavy bombers. They are a ragged, desperate collection of aircraft, and they are flying toward the most powerful carrier force in the world. At 6:30, the Japanese strike hits Midway. The island shakes under the bombs. Hangars explode, fuel tanks erupt in pillars of black smoke. But the American planes are already gone. The runways are damaged, but not destroyed. The anti-aircraft guns keep firing. Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, leading the strike, radios back to Nagumo. There is need for a second attack wave. This is the moment the mistake begins. Nagumo looks at the message. He looks at the reserve planes on his carriers. They are armed with torpedoes for attacking ships, but there are no ships. Intelligence said there would be no American carriers until June 6th. His pilots are reporting that Midway is still dangerous. A second strike is needed. At 7:15, Nagumo makes a decision. He orders the reserve planes to be rearmed. Take off the torpedoes, put on bombs, prepare for a second attack on Midway. This is not a simple operation. A torpedo weighs nearly a ton. It must be lowered from the plane, rolled away, replaced with general-purpose bombs. The hangars become workshops. Ordnance crews work frantically, stacking the torpedoes along the walls, hauling the bombs into position. And then, at 7:28, the world changes. A scout plane from the cruiser Tone sends a crackling message, sighted what appears to be 10 enemy surface ships, bearing 010, distance 240 miles, ships, American ships, where there should be nothing. Nagumo freezes. For 13 minutes he stares at the message. He does not know what kind of ships. Cruisers, destroyers, transports. He sends a follow-up order to the scout plane. Ascertain ship types. Report immediately. But the scout plane is a float plane with a single observer struggling to identify specks on the horizon from 15,000 feet. The response takes time. Precious time. Time during which the ordnance crews continue to rearm. At 7:45, another report arrives. Enemy ships are 5 cruisers and 5 destroyers. No carriers. Nagumo exhales. He can continue with the Midway strike. But at 8:20, the scout plane sends a final message. Enemy is accompanied by what appears to be a carrier. A carrier. Now Nagumo faces a nightmare. His planes are half-armed with bombs, half-armed with torpedoes. The torpedoes that were removed are stacked in the hangars, not secured, not stored properly. His first strike wave is returning from Midway, low on fuel, some of them damaged. They need to land. They need to land now. And somewhere out there, an American carrier is launching planes at him. What does he do? Japanese doctrine is clear. You do not launch piecemeal. You launch a coordinated strike. All your bombers, all your fighters, together. A hammer blow. So Nagumo makes another decision. Land the returning planes. Rearm everything with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs. Launch a massive strike against the American fleet. He needs 45 minutes. Just 45 minutes of peace to get his planes reorganized, spotted on deck, and launched. He will not get it. At 9:20 in the morning, the first American torpedo bombers arrive over the Japanese fleet. They are Torpedo Squadron 8 from Hornet, 15 obsolete Douglas Devastators led by Lieutenant Commander John Waldron. Waldron is a South Dakota native with Sioux blood in his veins. He is 41 years old, ancient for a combat pilot. He has trained his squadron relentlessly. He has told them what to expect. 3 days before the battle, he gathered his pilots in the ready room. He told them to get their personal affairs in order. He told them some of them would not come back. Now he is leading them straight at 4 Japanese carriers. There are no American fighters with them. The Wildcats that were supposed to escort them never made the rendezvous. They are alone. 15 slow, clumsy torpedo bombers against 50 Zeros and a wall of anti-aircraft fire. Waldron does not hesitate. He pushes his throttle forward and heads for the nearest carrier. The Zeros descend on his squadron like wolves. The anti-aircraft guns open up, throwing black puffs of smoke across the sky. One by one, the Devastators begin to fall. They do not turn back. They do not break formation. They bore in, trying to get close enough to drop their torpedoes. Waldron's plane is hit. It bursts into flame and cartwheels into the ocean. The others follow. The sky becomes a slaughterhouse. In less than 30 minutes, all 15 planes are gone. Every single one shot down. Of the 30 men who took off from Hornet that morning, 29 are dead. 1 man survives. Ensign George Gay is thrown from his burning aircraft. He bobs in the water, bleeding, hiding under a seat cushion to avoid strafing Zeros. He will watch the rest of the battle from the ocean. Torpedo Squadron 8 did not score a single hit, but they did something far more important. They pulled every Zero in the Japanese fleet down to wavetop height. They forced the carriers to turn and maneuver to disrupt their deck operations, and they were only the first wave. At 9:30, 14 more Devastators from Enterprise arrive. Torpedo Squadron 6. They attack without fighter cover. They fly through the same wall of steel that killed Torpedo 8. 10 are shot down. No hits. At 10:15, 12 Devastators from Yorktown appear. Torpedo Squadron 3. They have a few fighters with them, but not enough. The Zeros swarm them. 10 are shot down. No hits. In less than an hour, the American torpedo squadrons have lost 35 of 41 aircraft. They have killed themselves against the Japanese defenses. The Zeros are triumphant. The anti-aircraft gunners are cheering. The carriers are unscratched, and the Japanese fighters are all at sea level. At 10:20, Wade McCluskey is running out of fuel. Lieutenant Commander Clarence Wade McCluskey is the air group commander from Enterprise. He has been leading 33 Dauntless dive bombers on a search pattern for over 2 hours. He was given coordinates for the Japanese fleet, but when he arrived, there was nothing. Empty ocean. He is not a dive bomber pilot by training. He transferred from fighters only 2 months ago. He does not know the manual by heart. What he knows is instinct. He knows the Japanese have to be somewhere. He has a choice. Turn back now and maybe, barely, make it to the carrier, or keep searching and risk losing his entire squadron to fuel exhaustion. He decides to search for another 15 minutes, just 15 more minutes. At 10:05, he spots something. A lone destroyer racing northeast at flank speed, trailing a white wake across the blue water. It is Arashi, returning to the fleet after depth-charging the American submarine Nautilus. McCluskey does not know any of this. What he knows is that destroyers do not steam alone at maximum speed for no reason. That ship is going somewhere. He banks his formation to follow. 10 minutes later, the Japanese carriers appear on the horizon. 4 huge ships, surrounded by a ring of escorts, their decks covered with aircraft. They are beautiful. They are vulnerable. They are going to die. McCluskey gives the order. Attack. At the same moment, 17 dive bombers from Yorktown arrived from the southeast. Led by Lieutenant Commander Max Leslie, they have been flying a different search pattern. By pure chance, by a coincidence that will be debated by historians for 80 years, both American dive bomber groups arrive over the Japanese fleet at exactly the same time, and there are no Zeros to stop them. The fighters are still at wave level, recovering from the torpedo attacks, refueling on the carriers. The anti-aircraft guns are pointed at the water, not the sky. Nobody is looking up. 10:22. The American dive bombers push over and begin their screaming descent. A Japanese lookout sees them first. He points at the sky. He screams a warning, but it is too late. Lieutenant Dick Best leads his section down on a Kagi. He is aiming for the big red circle painted on the flight deck. His 500-pound bomb releases. It falls for 23 seconds. It strikes the deck just aft of the midship elevator. It punches through the flight deck and explodes in the upper hangar, among the armed and fueled planes, among the torpedoes stacked along the walls, among the bombs that were never properly secured. Akagi erupts from within. At the same moment, McCluskey's squadron is diving on Kaga. 4 bombs hit. The first strikes just forward of the bridge, killing the captain and most of the senior officers instantly. The others tear through the flight deck into the hangars. Secondary explosions begin almost immediately. Fuel lines rupture. Flames race through the ship. 100 yards away, Yorktown's bombers are hitting Soryu. 3 bombs find their mark. The carrier is torn apart from the inside out. In 5 minutes, 3 of Japan's 4 fleet carriers are burning wrecks. Nagumo is standing on the bridge of Akagi when the bomb hits. The explosion throws him against the bulkhead. Smoke pours up through the deck. He can see Kaga burning to port. He can see Soryu burning to starboard. His chief of staff is shouting at him to evacuate. He refuses. This is his flagship. These are his men. But there is nothing he can do. The fires are spreading too fast. The damage control parties cannot contain them. The aviation fuel is burning at 2,000 degrees. The torpedoes in the hangars are cooking off. Finally, his staff drags him to the edge of the deck. A rope is lowered to a waiting destroyer. The admiral of the greatest carrier force ever assembled escapes his flagship by sliding down a rope. At 10:46, Nagumo transfers his flag to the light cruiser Nagara. He is in shock. His eyes are blank. He has lost 3 carriers in 300 seconds, but 1 carrier remains. Hiryu was separated from the other carriers during the morning's maneuvering. The American dive bombers missed her, and her air group commander, Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, is still alive. At 10:54, Hiryu launches a counterattack. 18 dive bombers and 6 fighters claw into the sky, heading for the American fleet. Tomonaga is leading them. His plane was damaged during the morning's Midway strike. His fuel tank is holed. He knows he does not have enough fuel to return. He is going anyway. At noon, the Japanese find Yorktown. The American carrier has launched everything she has. Her deck is nearly empty. Her fighters are scattered across the ocean, chasing Japanese planes or guarding the fleet. When the Japanese dive bombers appear out of the sun, there are only a handful of wildcats to stop them. Tomonaga pushes over into his dive. Anti-aircraft fire rakes his plane. His wingman sees him release his bomb just before his aircraft disintegrates. The bomb hits Yorktown's flight deck. 2 more bombs strike home. 1 penetrates to the boiler rooms. Yorktown loses power. She slows to a stop, dead in the water, smoke pouring from her stacks. She is not sinking, but she is crippled. At 2:30, Hiryu launches again. 10 torpedo bombers and 6 fighters. They find Yorktown again. The carrier has managed to get underway, her damage control teams working miracles. but she cannot maneuver effectively. 2 torpedoes slam into her portside. She takes on a 23-degree list. Her captain orders abandon ship. For a moment it seems like a draw. 3 Japanese carriers for 1 American, a painful trade, but not catastrophic. But the Americans are not finished. At 3:30, a scout plane from Yorktown spots Hiryu, the last carrier, the last hope of the Japanese striking force. Enterprise still has planes. 24 dauntless dive bombers, survivors of the morning's attack, refueled and rearmed. Admiral Spruance does not hesitate. He launches everything. At 5 in the afternoon, the American dive bombers find Hiryu. She is zigzagging at full speed, her deck covered with planes preparing to launch another strike at Yorktown. The Japanese fighters rise to meet the Americans, but there are too few of them now. Too many have been lost. Too many have been spent. 4 bombs hit Hiryu. The same chain of destruction that consumed her sisters now consumes her. The hangars explode, the fuel ignites, the fires spread until they cannot be stopped. At 2:30 in the morning on June 5th, the crew abandons ship. The captain stays behind. So does Admiral Yamaguchi, the carrier division commander. They do not want to survive this defeat. At 9 in the morning, Japanese destroyers fire torpedoes into what remains of Akagi. The flagship of the Pearl Harbor attack slides beneath the waves. Hiryu sinks an hour later. Kaga and Soryu are already gone, claimed by the fires the night before. The battle is over. The cost is staggering. Japan has lost 4 fleet carriers. They are irreplaceable. Japanese shipyards cannot build carriers fast enough to replace them. More importantly, Japan has lost their air groups. The pilots who sank the Prince of Wales and the Repulse. The pilots who devastated Pearl Harbor. The mechanics who knew every bolt on those aircraft. The armorers who could fuse a bomb in the dark. The institutional knowledge built up over years of training and combat. Gone. All of it gone in one day. The United States has lost Yorktown and the destroyer Hammond. Yorktown will actually refuse to sink for 2 more days until a Japanese submarine finishes her on June 7th. 150 aircraft, 307 men. The ratio is not 4-to-1. It is not 10-to-1. It is a transformation of the entire war. Before Midway, Japan was winning. After Midway, Japan was losing. The decline would take 3 more years to play out. There would be Guadalcanal and the Philippines and Iwo Jima and Okinawa. There would be 500,000 more deaths. But the trajectory was set on June 4th, 1942, in 5 minutes of screaming dive bombers and exploding carriers. The attack on Midway was a huge mistake. But it was not one mistake. It was a chain of mistakes. Each link forged from overconfidence and bad luck, and doctrine followed too rigidly. The first mistake was believing the code was unbroken. The Japanese changed JN-25 in December 1941. They believed the new version was secure. They transmitted their plans in exquisite detail: dates, locations, ship assignments, admiral movements. They handed their enemy a complete picture of the operation and never knew it. The second mistake was splitting the fleet. Admiral Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, dispersed his forces across the Pacific. The main battle fleet was 300 miles behind Nagumo's carriers. A diversionary force was attacking the Aleutian Islands. Transport groups were scattered along the approach routes. If all those ships had been concentrated, the American carriers would have faced a wall of steel they could not penetrate. Instead, Nagumo fought alone. The third mistake was the scout plane. The cruiser Tone was supposed to launch its reconnaissance aircraft at 4:30 in the morning, along with all the other scouts. But there was a problem with the catapult. The plane did not launch until 5 30 minutes late. That plane was the one assigned to the sector where the American fleet was waiting. If it had launched on time, Nagumo would have known about the American carriers before he ordered his planes rearmed with bombs. He would have had time to prepare. 30 minutes. The battle might have pivoted on 30 minutes. The fourth mistake was the rearming decision. When Tomonaga called for a second strike on Midway, Nagumo should have ignored him. Doctrine said, "Keep the reserve armed for ships." Yamamoto's orders said, "Keep the reserve armed for ships." But Nagumo was on the scene. He saw the reports of damage. He made a judgment call. And then, when he learned about the American carriers, he could not undo it. The torpedoes were off. The bombs were on. The hangars were chaos. He needed 45 minutes to sort it out, and the American torpedo bombers would not give him 45 seconds. The fifth mistake was the fighters. When the torpedo squadrons attacked, the Zeros massacred them. Not a single torpedo hit a Japanese ship, but the Zeros followed the devastators down to sea level. They were refueling on the decks when the dive bombers appeared. For perhaps 3 minutes, the Japanese carriers had no combat air patrol above 20,000 feet. 3 minutes was enough. The sixth mistake was luck. McCluskey followed Arashi on a hunch. The Yorktown and Enterprise air groups arrived at exactly the same moment by pure chance. The bombs hit where they would do the most damage, among fueled aircraft and unsecured ordnance. You can explain Midway with intelligence. You can explain it with tactics. You can explain it with doctrine and logistics and training, but at the end, you have to acknowledge that sometimes history turns on the spin of a coin. Sometimes the difference between victory and annihilation is a destroyer heading in the right direction at the right time and a pilot who decides to follow. The aftermath rippled through the rest of the war. Yamamoto survived Midway, but he would be killed the following year when American fighters, guided by intercepted radio intelligence, ambushed his transport plane over Bougainville. He had seen this coming. Before Pearl Harbor, he had told the Japanese government that he could run wild for 6 months or a year, but after that he had no confidence in victory. He was right almost to the day. Nagumo survived Midway, but his career was over. He was shuffled from command to command, a shadow of the admiral who had led the attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1944, he was sent to Saipan to command the island's defenses. When American forces overran the island, he shot himself in a cave, too ashamed to surrender, too broken to survive the defeat. The pilots who died at Midway are largely forgotten. John Waldron's name is inscribed on memorials. George Gay wrote a book and gave interviews until he died in 1994. But the 29 men of Torpedo Squadron 8 who went down in the water, the pilots of the other torpedo squadrons who flew into certain death with no hope of survival, the Japanese airmen who burned on their carriers or drowned in the Pacific, they are statistics now, numbers in a history book. But they were the ones who made the victory possible. The dive bombers got the kills. But the torpedo bombers drew the fighters down. They paid the price in full, knowing they were paying it, and they went anyway. Today, if you could somehow sail to the coordinates where the battle took place, you would find nothing. Empty ocean. 3 miles down, on the bottom, there are the wrecks. Kaga and Akagi and Soryu and Hiryu. They have been found in recent years, photographed by deep-sea submersibles. They sit in the eternal darkness, rusting, silent, their guns pointed at nothing. The flight decks that launched the planes that destroyed Pearl Harbor are crushed by the pressure. The hangars that burned so fiercely are cold and still. The bones of the men who died aboard them have long since become part of the sea. The huge mistake of the Japanese at Midway was thinking they could not be beaten. They had won every battle for 6 months. They had swept their enemies from the Western Pacific. They believed that spirit and courage and superior training would always triumph over American materiel and American numbers. They were wrong. Midway proved that intelligence could defeat experience, that desperation could defeat confidence, that sometimes the underdog, if he knows where to bite, can bring down the wolf. The war would continue for 3 more years. The killing would continue. The firebombs would fall on Tokyo. The atomic bombs would fall on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The emperor would speak to his people and tell them to endure the unendurable. But the end was written on June 4th, 1942. It was written in 5 minutes of diving aircraft and exploding carriers. It was written by a codebreaker in a bathrobe who never got the recognition he deserved. It was written by a pilot who followed a destroyer on a hunch. The carriers that attacked Midway never came home. The mistake was fatal, and the consequences were forever. And somewhere in the Central Pacific, 3 miles beneath the waves, 4 broken ships keep silent watch over the turning point of a war.